Good morning. Thanks, ladies. That was a really fabulous song. It was a real treat to be able to hear you sing some original music, and it's not something that I often get an opportunity to experience, so thank you so much. And thank you for everything. The morning has just been so delightful at this point. I've been visiting here quite a bit, and I just really love the space that this is. My daughter and I live up in West Lafayette, so trying to get down here at 10 o'clock in the morning when you're still dealing with homework and everything that has to be done on a Sunday before you get ready for school on Monday can be a little challenging sometimes, but I'm spending more and more time down here and I just love it. Today I'm going to be talking about live to your full potential and die with no regrets. And I am like probably a lot of you in this room. I would call myself a recovering Catholic. And I remember when they told me when I was 10 years old I couldn't be a priest. They told me I could be a nun. I could be in the back of the room. And I was like, are you kidding me? Even at 10 years old, I knew I wanted to be in the front of the room and not the back of the room. And so for close to 30 years, I struggled with how do I get out of this Catholic mentality to kind of have the life that I want to live. So I did like what a lot of people did, you know, I went to Episcopalian church, and then I went to the Lutheran church, and then I went to Baha'i, and then Universal UU churches and Unitarian churches, and finally I landed here when I heard this thing called thoughts held in mind reproduce after their kind. I went, oh my God, somebody is speaking my language. This really works for me. And what I realized was this was the first place that I came to where I actually had choice. Like I got to realize that I could choose how my life was going to go in the service of God or in service of whatever it was that I thought was important. And I remember as a kid thinking about, I had a sister that I found myself coaching. You know, everybody coaches their sisters and brothers, right? But I remember saying to her, you know, what she could or couldn't do or what she should or shouldn't do so that she wouldn't make mom so mad all the time, right? And then I remember being on the playground with the girls and going to a Catholic school all the way through 12th grade. The girls would be like, how do I get that boy over there to like me? So it didn't matter. It seemed like I was coaching people all the time. And I started to think about this idea of why do people want coaching? Even back then, I didn't have it distinguished as that, but I found myself always in this coaching position. And as I started to think through what did I want in my life, I started to think about this idea of living to my full potential. I noticed that there was a point where I became really frenetic in my life. There's so much to see, there's so much to do, there's so much to experience, and I was actually exhausted. I was exhausted trying to get everything done. And I thought, is that really what my full potential is all about? Is it really about having to explore and try everything on the planet so that I can die like screaming into my grave, right? Where there's absolutely nothing left. And I thought, well, part of it is that, but maybe there's more to it. So I kept reflecting back on how does this whole notion of living to your full potential exist in our lives? So Jesse, can you get me the next slide? One of the things that I remember is my dad would always say to me, Dawn, you can do anything, you can be anything, whatever it is that you want. But whatever that is right now, whether it was a boyfriend or my homework or the job I had, Dawn, that's the hamburger in life. You need to go for the steak. Keep going for the steak in life. Well, after a while I realized that there was no way my whole life seemed like it was hamburger. Now, thank God I loved hamburger, but I never felt like I was ever there. Like, no matter what I did, it was always just another version of hamburger, never got to steak. And that made me think about what is steak? What is the steak that's in life, right? So, Jesse, can you go to the next slide? So you hear, you can do whatever you want. Everybody says that to all the kids, right? You can do whatever you want. You can be whatever you want. Go explore the world. The world is your oyster. Go have a good time. Jesse, if I can have the next one. Then all of a sudden you're 18, graduating from high school, or 25, or 23, or whatever that age is when you're graduating from college. And you hear these things called, okay, now you got to go be responsible, get a job, settle down, don't rock the boat, you gotta fit in. And you're kind of like, what? I've spent 18 years, everybody telling me I can do whatever I want, and now I gotta settle down? What the heck does that mean? And all of a sudden, Jess, if you can go to the next slide, all of a sudden you find out you've been tricked. You've been tricked by your teachers, you've been tricked by the ministers, you've been tricked by your parents, you've been tricked by the world. This whole idea of full potential is a bunch of hooey, right? And so then we go into this prison of our making, right? It's kind of like the door is shut. All these dreams that we had get stuck behind the prison wall. And we know that we could be something else, and we're filled with all this unfulfilled possibility, and we're stuck. We're really trapped because the world won't let us be that, right? So, Jess, if I could have the next one, that'd be great. But what I find, as I have found in this world of coaching, is that people are locked in this prison, but they're still asking, what can I do? How do I do this? How do I get beyond this? How do I go for the stake in life? But we still got these prison walls, but we can see through the slats, right? You can see that there's something out there. We just don't know how to get at it. And I have spent a lot of time working with people who I can see have potential. You know, you've been around people like that where they're complaining about how their life's not working, and it's kind of like, look, you're smart. You know how to do this. Why aren't you using the skills that you have? I can see what you need to do. Everybody else can see what you need to do, but for some reason you don't take those actions. And it's because we're locked in this prison. This idea of what we thought that we could be is now trapped behind the wall of the prison doors. So go ahead, Jess. So what I've discovered in my work in a lot of different arenas is that, first of all, a lot of us have forgotten how to dream. We don't know what we want, and we have forgotten how to dream because we're so busy in this world of be responsible, don't rock the boat. People who are dreaming, they're rocking the boat, man, right? And you are trained to stop taking all those risks. And then I found out that we give up too early. Have you ever been working on something and you stop, you quit, and it's kind of like, man, if I had just gone a little bit further, I would have made it, right? We just quit a little bit too early for some reason. And then the last piece I discovered is that we don't believe we're going to die. You know, if I looked in your calendar, I bet that you're doing things that you don't want to do, you don't care about doing, and if you thought you had a month to live, you would probably stop doing some of those things. But we don't interact with our life like someday we're going to die. We interact with our life like, I know you're going to die, right? I know you are. I mean, it's part of the living, dying process, but I think deep down, I'm never going to die. By the time it's time for me to die, they're going to come up with some sort of medical technology, and I'm not going to have to die. But, you know, thanks for all the work that you guys did, so I don't have to die, right? Because dying, we don't like to deal with it. I mean, we know it's going to happen, but we don't live like we're going to die. Otherwise, we'd be back at the beginning. We'd have some dreams. We wouldn't give up so early. Because we're not present to the fact that life in this body is a temporary thing. And we get to play as much as we want to. So Jess, if I can have the next slide. So, what do you want? I remember, if you go to the next piece of this, I remember being in a class where the leader said, who wants $1 million? So how many of you guys in here want $1 million? Come on, raise your hand. Do you want $1 million? You don't have to put it all in your pocket, but if you had $1 million, think of all the things you could do with $1 million. You could pay off the church's debt, right? Even if it's not in your pocket. You could pay somebody's medical bills, you could give to your favorite charity. There's so much you could do with $1 million. And you only need a little bit for yourself. People want $1 million, and she said, you can never have $1 million. Most people can never have $1 million because you can't see $1 million. It could be right under your nose, and you wouldn't see it. And I thought, she's crazy. If there was $1 million under my nose, I'd know it, right? I'd know it. Well, then I started to think, why would she ever say something like that? And I realized it was because I actually can't see it. You know, there's a number, 1 with 6 zeros and a couple of commas and a dollar sign, but that's not $1 million. That's just a representation of $1 million. What would it look like to have $1 million? What kind of accounts would it be in? How would I actually spend it? Could I see myself writing the checks? And until I could start to see that, money couldn't start to flow in, right? Our dreams can't start to flow in until we actually can see them. And that's what happens is we stop dreaming, so we don't get to see our dreams anymore. So we can't even envision them or taste them or feel them or hope that they're ever going to show up. So if you can go to the next slide, Jesse. So the question becomes, what do you want? What do you dream about? What do you hope for? And I want you to start thinking about what is it that you want. Because, you know, there's a lot of stuff that I do that's not what I want. that I do because other people want it. And then I make it be mine, but it's not really that thing that I want. Now, let me give a caveat here. I am not encouraging everyone to go out and turn your life upside down. I'm not encouraging everybody to go out and take some risky behavior and then come back and blame me for this, okay? I want you to be thinking, though, about what's the kind of stuff that would be important to you, that would help you live a life where you die, when you're on your deathbed and you're saying, I did it all, and I'm satisfied that I did everything that I could do. All right? So it's not like go out and flip everything around. But it's part of what you might want to do is what others want you to do. But it's got to be your dream that you're doing it for, not because they're asking you to do it. Now the problem is when you start to get a dream together, like, what is it that I want to do? So my dream is I'm going to live to be 120. So I'll be 55 this summer. And I've still got, 60 plus years before that's going to happen. There's a lot of things to do between now and then. And I might not get there, but that's part of my dream, all right? And I want my daughter Maddie to get all the way through college without any kind of expenses that we have to deal with. And I have lots of big dreams. I want to generate $500,000 this year. If you're in the workshop this afternoon, you'll hear about how I'm making progress toward $500,000 very rapidly. But it's my dream, right? What is it that I want? And if you can go to the next slide, Jesse. What happens is you're the guy in the blue, all right? And you've got this dream, but you're surrounded by everyone around you who doesn't want you to be successful. I mean, they'll say they want you to be successful. Everybody wants everybody else's dream to come true. The problem is, though, you're surrounded by people that are scared. If you change, what happens to them, right? If you change, they're afraid you're going to leave them or you're going to be better than them. Nobody wants to feel inferior, right? And they're scared that you're going to think less of them. And I think that's the biggest thing, is people don't want you to be successful because then you might not like them anymore, right? Because we live in this world because almost everybody's still locked behind the gate. So what happens if you want to start to create your dream? So if you go to the next slide, there's going to be a couple of them pretty quickly here, Jesse. So what happens is, in this particular slide, the reason why people don't want you to be successful is because of this thing. It's pointing to the reptilian brain. So the reptilian brain is a very important part of your body, all right? It's your fight or flight mode. You got to have it. You don't want to have to think twice if there's a fire. You don't want to have to think twice if somebody's chasing you down the road. You want to be able to take the action to protect yourself. The problem is that 10 million years of gene pool has allowed this thing to also filter your feelings, your memories, and how you interact with others, and it also filters against how you talk and you think and how you move in your life. So this reptilian brain, we got to keep it settled down so that you can actually take on the dreams of your choice. All right? But remember, you're up against 10 million years of gene pool. Luckily, the rest of the brain is much bigger, and it actually does have a shot at it. So if you want to have your dream come true, you're going to have to start to deal with people who are scared, and they're coming from their reptilian brain. Next one, Jesse. And the thing is, you have a dream. It's in there. I remember, reading about Michelangelo, and they were, someone had talked to Michelangelo, at least that's what they say. I wasn't there. But they said, how did you get David? How is it that you carved David so beautifully? How did you create David? And Michelangelo said, I didn't create David. I released David from the stone. Right? So your dream is in there. Now your job is to release it. Right? It starts to unpack all that stuff that's covering up the dream that you have. Next one. So somehow you got to ignore, not be mean or rude or nasty, but somehow you've got to ignore those that make you feel fearful and sad and that degrade you in your dreams. Something that Rumi had to say, right? It's a very important piece because you're always going to be in this tension between what you want and what the world around you has been designed to keep in place. Next slide, Jesse. So what happens then is you give up too early. You're on the road, you've got your dream, you've got people surrounding you who aren't quite sure what you're going to do, but you start to go after your dream and you give up too early. Next slide. So when we're in school, we're taught that the shortest distance between A and B is a straight line. So if you want your dream, so if you're at A, you want to dream as B. Get there fast. Go fast. Hurry up. Be productive. Go make money. Get your promotions. Get there, get there, get there, get there. I got to tell you, that's not been my experience in life. Somehow, it kind of goes up and down and around and sideways and backwards and forwards, and eventually I can get to B, but I never have that experience of straight line stuff. And we often give up early because we think it's supposed to be like a straight line, because we're trained. Get there fast. Get there really fast. Next slide, Jesse. So what if wandering off the path teaches you a little bit about failure, and that failure is really part of potential? In order for me to have this part of my hand, I also have to have this part of your hand. You have to have both sides. You have to have ups and you have to have downs, so that you can, to experience the up, you have to have the down. To experience the down, you have to have the up. To experience love, you have to experience hate or discomfort. Happiness, you have to have sadness. Well, in order to feel, what if part of potential is really about experiencing the failure as well as the successes? But we give up early when we fall off the path because failure is bad, failure is wrong, right? So we give up, because obviously if we're failing, we're not going to make it. But what if the only way to make something stick is to have looked under every rock, find all the ways that you can fail, so that when you actually get there, it stays, right? Next slide. So Winston Churchill says, success is going from failure to failure without any loss of enthusiasm. Okay? So it's, okay, there's another failure, let's go. There's another failure, let's go. All right, do people walk around like that? No. But it's because we're trained. Go get a job, be responsible, settle down, don't rock the boat, and by God, don't make any mistakes along the way. So if you're going to go from point A to point B and you're going to do this, you're going to have failures, you're going to make mistakes, it's going to be a very different world, right? But if you're going to live to your full potential, you've got to be able to experience all of it. All right, next slide. So if you're experiencing all of it, you might actually, at some point, get present to the fact that you're not going to be here forever. Right? There's some point you wake up and you say, all right, now what? This really is my life. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What life do I want to live? So for someone like me, I had Maddie late in life, and so now I'm, having this great relationship. I've got this high school daughter who we're having a blast. Well, not always, right, Maddie? But mostly we are learning, right? We're on this path on a regular basis. And the thing is, I'm really present to, like all of her friends' parents are 20 years younger than me. And I'm getting used to this idea that I'm going to, I got to say 120. I got to be around long enough to see some grandkids, right? But what I'm finding is that even all the parents and all the kids, you're around kids in your 50s, when you're around high school kids, they have this idea that they're immortal. I don't want her to start thinking about that she might die someday. But I get present to the fact that, you're still taking risks and you're trying things and you're exploring, you're experimenting. And at some point, I stopped doing that. So hanging around high school kids gets me present to the idea that I could be immortal and I could live like there's no tomorrow. But then I think about, no, I really do. I'm not always going to be here. What am I going to do? How am I going to be the best me I can be? So go ahead to the next slide, Jess. So do you know any of these people? Right? So there's this guy, John and Mary and Jonathan and Sally, and I can't even read whose name that is, somebody named Richard Crisp, and this Casey Storm, who died in 2007. I don't know any of these people, and I'll bet you don't know any of them either. And there's this cemetery behind my house, and I walk my dogs in it almost every day. And I come across cemeteries, or headstones like this, and there is no one coming and looking at those headstones. There's no flowers at those headstones. A lot of them died 100 years ago, 150 years ago, 200 years ago. And they had a life. And they made an impact on the people that were all around them. But I don't necessarily know that impact right now. Somebody who died 200 years ago, I don't know what it was. The time to make the impact is with the people who are in your life right now, on yourself and on the people around you. Because someday you're just going to be a headstone just like this, right? And unless you're a really famous person, you may not know the impact that you're going to leave behind. And even the most famous people, we don't even think about them anymore. Like the guy who invented the safety pin. He was a very important guy, but I wouldn't even know where to find his headstone to say thank you, right? But he has left this legacy, but no one visits his headstone anymore. So the point is that we don't know these people, and in 100 years, people aren't going to know us. So if that's the case, What are you going to do today to live? How are you going to live to your full potential? Can I go to the next slide, Jess? All right, so if you're born and die, do you still want that shortest distance? Right? You don't want that, because whatever we were doing before is going to apply to death. No, man, so let's scrunch this way down and have lots of experiences. Because living to your full potential actually is the ability to explore all of you. Explore the good, explore the bad, explore the ups and the downs. God gave you all of these emotions. God gave you all these skills, all these talents, right? And a lot of them we have shut down. We're not allowed to be angry. We're not allowed to argue. We're not allowed to fight back. Okay? Those are bad emotions. But what God gave you all the emotions. What is your full potential if you could actually explore all of your emotions and all of your skills and try things out and take risks? That would be what living to your full potential is about. One of the things I've discovered is that I've always been in such a rush that part of my potential now is actually learning how to sit and relax. I actually, the quadruple A personality that I normally am really resists this, whatever this B, C, or D kind of personality is. It's a whole new animal. But by starting to explore that side of me allows me to be more available for people, allows me to make a different kind of an impact, to make a different kind of mark on the world today. Can you go to the next slide, Jesse? So one of my favorite movies is The Princess Diaries, okay? And there's a place in it where she is, she's 15 years old. She knows that she's going to become a princess. She doesn't like the idea of being a princess. She's scared to death. And she reads this letter from her father, and it says, "Courage is not the absence of fear, but the judgment that something else is far more important than fear. The brave may not live forever, but the cautious, they do not live at all." So from now on, you are traveling the road from who you know you are today to who you think you can become. And so what if that's what the role of living to your full potential is all about? There's this gap between who you know you are and where it is you want to be. And living to your full potential is exploring that gap. And that's all it is. Between now and the day you die, you're exploring the gap. And you're going to be uncomfortable. Gaps are never comfortable, right? They're really not comfortable. The thing is, though, if that thing at the end, that B, right, A and B, born, die, if that B or that die part is somebody else's dream or somebody else's goal, you're just going to be miserable. What if you could put your own B at the end? What if you actually explored your life from, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. This is the gap that there is for me to close. Next slide, Jesse. So it's all about, what if everything is potential between now and when you die? That there's really nowhere to go except to start thinking about what it is your dreams are. Next slide, Jesse. So there will be a gap always between who you know you are and who you want to be. The people who are content, most people that I find are content are more resigned. People who say, yeah, life is fine. Really, and I don't know a lot of people who are truly like enlightened like a Buddha. If I would love to meet more of them, honestly I would. But most people, it's just resignation. I'm content, I'm happy, is really resignation. What if the whole thing in life is about exploring that gap, right? And it's not always going to be comfortable, but the gap tells you that you're on your way to fulfilling your full potential. So anytime there's a little bit of discomfort, now you don't have to feel bad about it, but just like, okay, something's not quite sitting the way I thought it was going to be. That's your full potential. You're on your way. All right, Jesse, next one. So you're always going to come to this crossroad. You're going to have some decisions. You're always going to have a next action to take. So here's kind of an easy rule of thumb. Does that action or that decision express who you are? If it doesn't, does it express who you will become? Okay? If it does, then take it. If it doesn't, don't do that. Try to not do that. Saying no is probably the hardest thing on the planet, right? But if you're actually fulfilling a dream of yours, you want to start to take some action towards saying no to things that truly are not going to get you there. If it does express who you are, then by means, go ahead and do it. Next slide, Jesse. So kind of to bring all this to a close, potential, wherever you are is perfect. The question to ask yourself, though, is the thing that I'm moving toward, is that mine or is that somebody else's? So can you get to go for something that's important to you? And go for it and don't give up. Failure is part of the process. It's this relationship that we have to failure that's so hard, where we're trained that failure is wrong. You actually can only learn and grow from the failures, right? And then remember, you won't always be in this body. So whose life are you going to live? So thanks. And I appreciate being able to share this with you today.
Dawn, we just completed the Eat Squared book, home study by Pam Grout, and it was about touching into the field of potentiality and being very clear about what you need and want. So it's a great lesson on the heels of that whole program. Thank you very much for doing this.
Wanted to tell you a little bit about the song that I wrote. Spring is an extra magical time for me, bringing back memories of childhood trips to the woods with my family to look for mushrooms. I love the woods, especially the wildflowers. In 2006, I went to a retreat in northern Indiana. Spring had come and gone in Indianapolis, and to my delight, spring was in full bloom. What a gift to experience spring again. As I walked in the woods, I stopped atop a knoll. The sun was filtering down through the trees. I stood in an open ray of sunlight, feeling the cool breeze, and gazed upon the wildflowers while birds sang their songs. From that holy moment, this song was born. The presence of the moment stirred my very soul. Standing within a ray of sunshine, caresses of crisp breezes flow by, melodies sung by the birds, woodland wildflowers decorate the hills. In the woods